Welcome to 3 Things I've Learned with your host, Susan Dolci, where we share the stories that shift our souls. In the next hour, we will dive deep into the soul-shifting magic of stories. Stories of radical transformations, courageous breakthroughs, and life lessons. We're all students in this soul school called life. We don't need to do this alone. Why not share our notes? 3 Things I've Learned starts now. Hey everybody, welcome. Welcome to 3 Things I've Learned with me, Susan Dolci, where we share the stories that shift our souls. So it's finally starting to feel like spring in my part of Michigan. Everything is blooming and so are my allergies. So I really hope I can get through this without a lot of coughing or humming. But it's beautiful. I mean, the flowers are blooming. It's tulip time here. Tulip Festival is gorgeous. But to be honest, like this time of year always kind of stirs my creative side because, we're at Tulip Fest and we're looking at all these paintings of tulips. And so it just kind of juiced up my creative portion of myself. And I live near this huge recycling plant. Padnos Recycling, Louis Padnos, and it sits right on prime property on Lake Makatawa. So it's kind of an eyesore, but it's recycling, right? And they've been there for a really long time. So it's not the prettiest thing to drive by, but recycling. So we put up with it, right? But one of the things I do love about driving by that plant is that Stuart Padnos, and I'm not sure if he's co-owner or the brother, but he is the artist that takes these wayward pieces of scrap metal that are about to be crushed, and he turns them into these gorgeous sculptures. And they line the sidewalks by this plant, and all because it takes up several acres. This is a huge plant, but his sculptures are everywhere. And he started, his first piece was a flagpole that he designed, and that was in his backyard. And from there, he conceptualized and created over 70 different sculptures, everything from dogs to tulips to, it's amazing what the imagination that this man has. And so I know some of you will say, well, gosh, the guy's just talented, right? But my guest today will say that you also have that same innate ability to tap into your own creative genius. But instead of using metal and scrap parts, you're going to be using like emotional scraps, like emotional garbage, and turn it into a work of art. Corry MacDonald is a creative healer integrating her training as a transpersonal art therapist, heart speaker, and energy healer into her advanced cognitive coach training. With nearly a decade of cross-cultural experience, living in 5 countries abroad, and she's still abroad today, she helps people activate their creative intelligence. This gives them the freedom and grit to transform their challenges into wisdom and information through her signature creative method for accessing infinite potentials. She is the author of Life in Full Colors, Unlock Your Childlike Curiosity to Uncover and Activate the Creative Intelligence That You Are. Welcome, Corry.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here with you, Susan.
And so Corry was supposed to be on, I don't know if it was February or March, and we had to cancel because you were like, oh my gosh, I think I might even have COVID, and we scrambled together at the last minute. I was like so bummed, but I'm so glad we were able to reschedule for today.
Me too. We waited a while for this, so this is going to be sweet.
and the funny thing is, between now and then, between the time you had to cancel and now, I've watched so many of your videos and like participated in, so I can't wait to talk about that. But before we get started, Corry has offered a very generous gift to our listeners today. She's offering 1 free creating healing session to the first caller to upcycle whatever challenge you're going through to light and wisdom. And that number is 1-800-930-2819. So that is an amazing offer. Thank you, Corry. I take it up myself, but I'll pay you instead. So I love your book. Book.
Great.
Beautiful. Great. Did you design this cover? You had to design this cover.
I co-created with the team. Yeah, come on. I'm 6'1". I'm all about it. I am a human tree, I feel.
So it's
So
it's it's stunning, and but what I love about the title is that, it's called Life in Full Colors, is that it makes me think how much we're always living in the black and white and gray,
Mm,
right? And we're
yeah.
not really living life in full colors.
Yeah, and we don't even know we're in the black and white and gray usually. Like, I spent decades there not just thinking this is as good as it gets, you know? I didn't know how to get color, like my colors
Mhm.
expressed into the world, how to have a radiant, colorful life. I just didn't know that that could be an option for me. So, uh, the minute I figured that one out, I was like everything in my heart to just share it with as many people as I can.
It's my middle daughter is visiting us for about a month, and I love color. I really do. I love color. And our the whole time she was growing up, we had lots of color on our walls. Every kid's bedroom was a different color. I had a red living room. I mean, I loved color. And we moved here to this house, and for some reason, everything is a sea of beige and gray. And I like it. I like it because
Yeah.
I sew a lot, and so, like, my sewing room and, like, when I play with the colors, so it's sort of like this muted palette that,
Mm.
kind of juices me up to use color in other ways, but I just got my front door painted red. So, literally, like,
Oh,
this morning, now I've got this bright red front door.
oh, I love that. Fantastic. Oh my goodness, Susan, I so hear you. Living overseas, we're renting houses. So generally they're beige.
Mhm,
And so I've jumped from house to house, whether I'm in Asia or Middle East, it was always the same. And so I giggle because the moving guys would say, "What's with these massive paintings?" Because I couldn't paint the walls, so I would paint these huge canvases, sprays of color, you know?
yeah,
So, yeah, it's funny how sometimes that lack of color sparks your sewing or your door
mhm,
or,
mhm.
it sparks some where we get creative. We find other ways of adding that color.
So how does and I know it's sort of a metaphor for life, like, like not having any color in our life, but how does this show
Yeah.
up? Like, how do you know you're not living your life fully?
Mm, that's so good because, like I said, for years, I didn't even notice because it was my normal. We can adjust to whatever is our normal, even if it's not healthy or it's not colorful or it doesn't lacks vibrancy. I would say when I talk about a life of full colors, I'm thinking about a radiant, vibrant, pulsing connectedness to life force. So let's say the flip side of that would have some probably heavier hues.
Mhm,
Things like, well, for me personally, I woke up with a ton of fear. I called it literally called it the big fear.
mm,
And so anxiety. I had a lot of self-doubt. I had no easily straight to overwhelm. I would be just like a deer in headlights. So a lot underneath that was a lot of fear
mhm,
and a lot of sadness and that spiraled me down over time into depressions. It can be also just feeling like that kind of vague sense that isn't there more?
mm,
So there's different hues of this and different degrees. I could see it also in the way that I had to jack myself up for things with coffee or over
mm,
busying my life, like just so it would appear that I was living life, I almost
yeah.
creating a pseudo life, so there's different ways that this can show up. And what we can know is if we're really real and honest with ourselves, in that moment of quiet, you're feeling this dullness or this lack of like excitement for life and lack of connectedness with all of life, then there is something missing because we are pure life force in a pair of jeans and a sweater. No, I mean, no one taught me that as a kid, that that we're actually meant to be every day in some way, and it doesn't have to be big, but the connectedness of life force flowing through us is what we are supposed to be feeling. And like you mentioned, that upcycling artist at the beginning of this, conversation, I'm so grateful you did, because I mean, we are designed to flow. And I call it the creative intelligence. So we're meant to flow as the creative intelligence, but you could insert life force, you can insert um, source, God, whatever you want to say. And we're meant to flow as that in order to do like that upcycling artist, that when something hits us, so when I have a fear or when I have a sadness, instead of getting derailed by them and going to my spiral down or whatever my go-to is, glass of wine it was for me,
Mhm.
like I had to, I had to self-medicate, and I had all sorts of go-tos. Rather than getting derailed by them, just like that beautiful artist you mentioned, we can literally learn ways to upcycle these things and own them instead of avoiding them or busying up life to get away from them. We can actually take them, that these things, that these painful things that look heavy and they look broken, and we can learn how to pivot them for the wisdom and the intelligence that is right there for us, but just need to know how.
Um, I'm we're coming up on a break. I would like to find out more about your background as an artist,
Mm.
because I have a whole lot to talk about. And some of it about like that. Um, for me, art was all about perfection. So I definitely want to talk about that. And then,
Yeah.
how we actually can take these emotions and sort of the process that you use to make them bubble up and come into
Mm.
something that's art. You might want to rip it up or you might want to frame
Yes.
it, right. Okay. We're going to take a quick break. I'm talking with Corry MacDonald today, and we'll be right back. Hey, everybody, welcome back. Today, I am joined with Corry MacDonald. She's an art therapist. She's heart speaker. I can't wait to hear more about that. We're going to talk more about that later. And an energy healer. And where can everybody find you?
You can find me at creatinghealingwithcorry.com. And Corry is spelt Corry. Literally, my mom, typical Canadian, we say sorry a lot. She took the took off the S and plunked on a C when she heard the name.
Oh,
So
that's
that,
funny.
yeah, that's where you can access all that stuff.
And she's got workshops, she's got one-on-one sessions, but she's also offering today a free creating healing session to the first listener to call in. And that number is 800-930-2819. And so I'm just going to say it's a bunch of fun. It, it,
Yeah.
it really is. So you've been holding these like Facebook Live videos after your book came out. And so um, it was like, I think it was midday for me because Corey's in Brussels. So,
Right.
and she was like, it was synchronicity. Like I wasn't planning on being there. I was like, oh my, Corey's on, gotta do this. Grab my, grab my watercolor papers, and my watercolors and my paints and everything. I was like, I'm going to do this live with Corey. I was so excited. And she was talking about working through resentment. Right. And you
Yeah.
had some situation that created a lot of resentment. And so I was like, oh, resentment. Yeah, that runs deep. Um, and there's just this one time in my life that I'm still kind of working through. We lived in a community for 11 years, and I just had a really hard time
Mm.
connecting with. Like I just never felt like accepted there or like I really belonged. It was just a sort of an insular community. And so I really struggled. And that was like
Mm.
11 years. And so um, I forget I remember your process was really messy. And
Oh, yeah.
as I was, and as I was starting to do it, I was like, because me personally, I love art. I love watercolor painting. I love sewing. I love pretty much any arts and craftsy thing. But like I'm
Yeah.
the person who will go to YouTube and watch the watercolor person do it, and do the step by step because
Yes.
it has to look right. That's my perfectionist who likes to rear her ugly head all the time. And so I had to get outside of that, what is this going to look like when I'm done with it mentality.
Mm.
And it was really funny because I wrote down some letters, and like I made a circle and I wrote down some letters in the middle of it. And then um and then I put X's through them, just like big crossing out the letters.
Yeah.
And then I started to do like a jagged edge around the whole outside. And as I started doing that, you started doing that.
Wow.
And I was like,
Oh, I
this
have
is
chills just
yeah.
hearing you say that.
And then like I forget what my next stroke was. And then like it was like you were like 2 seconds or so behind what I was doing. And so I felt
Amazing.
so connected to you. And I just worked through it and I worked through it. And it ended up being this beautiful sunflower. And I think I wrote in the comments in that Facebook Live, I was like, because it was, you know, how I said to myself, sunflowers always keep their heads up to the sun.
Mm.
And to just remember, you know, to keep connection to source and keep your head up and let all of those bad feelings and stuff go by the wayside. So that so it, if you this is what Corey does. Like this is how she transmutes or works with you to transmute this stuff. And I'd like you to talk more about it because I've been jibber jabbering, but I was so excited to tell you that story because it
Mm.
was just I felt so connected to you when we were doing it.
Susan, I'm just holding that story. Like you can hear me. That was yummy. I'm going, because we are connected. And this is the thing. We now know that we are energetic beings at our core. And so that doesn't matter if you were over in Michigan and I was here in Belgium. We were attuned and we were working through our stuff. And that's the other thing. There's no time, no space. So something from 11 years ago or 27 years ago or 7 minutes ago, it don't matter. When it's ready, it's like, I always say it's like a sliver. You know, when you get a little sliver and it's ready to go,
Mhm.
your creative intelligence, your higher intelligence will move stuff to you. And that's exactly, I love that you shared your process. And I love that we were expressing in a very similar way. I miss the days of workshops when there
Mhm.
would be a room full of people and everyone's in their flow just, and as Susan said, it's not about a pretty perfect picture. In fact, I'm also a recovering perfectionist, and I think it's so wonderful and liberating, this process, because what we do is we're moving those trapped heavy emotions. And remember, we're talking about the upcycle guy at the upcycle plant. Like these aren't pretty emotions. We're talking about
Mhm.
resentment, we're talking about fear, we're talking about regret, shame, disgust, whatever. So when I invite people to move them through it, what it looks like, what I'm asking people to do is to almost act like you're in preschool and
Mhm.
just grab as a child would. They don't sit there and plan out, well, I'm moving disgust out, so maybe I should take a putrid orange. You know,
Yeah.
a 4-year-old's going to just grab yellow because yellow lights them up, and when they're bored with yellow, they're going to dump it and they're going to do, and then they're just going to move. And all of a sudden, when you take that approach, there is a beautiful life force in you that just knows what to do, and it'll come out like a blah or a doodle or a curve or a shark's teeth. Who knows? And we don't know. And that's what's gorgeous, is because we're not doing this from the head
Mhm.
and pre-thought out. We're actually dropping deeper into our heart, our core, our center. So it is amazing. I've seen workshops where everyone's in their thing, upcycling some heavy emotion. Just as Susan explained, words might tumble out, lines, a combination. Your system will know what to do to get this out of your field and onto a container, which is a piece of paper. So this stuff that you've been carrying around finally exits you. And then you can look at it and see it's not me. I'm not this thing.
Mhm.
And then that's when we can transform it. And I've seen so many times. I remember one time a group of 7 women all working away, and it was actually at the end of a course. So they were feeling pretty free of a lot of heavy emotions. And that day they all deliberately said, we're not going to look at each other or glance even over, So everybody literally turned their backs and said, at the end, why don't we turn and share our artwork? And by then they were a very attuned group, just as you and I felt that synergy and that you felt that connectedness. So
Mhm.
imagine after a few months, and really they were quite in sync. I'll never forget that day. Everyone had some sort of winged, they were flying out of there. There was a lot of birds. There was butterfly. There were even more abstract pieces, but they looked like this shape of the two wings opening up. And we were
Wow.
gobsmacked that, wow, look at that. We formed this, our energies mix and form a beautiful synergy. So when we free ourselves, we free those around us. It's very, very much an interconnected thing.
So, I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm not creative."
Mm.
um, One of my dearest friends says that all the time, and I'm like, "But you're like, you love to cook. You're creative in the kitchen. But so what do you like? If somebody's resistant to that or thinks that they can't do it because it has to look a certain way or be a
Mm.
certain way, what
Uh,
do you tell them?"
yeah. I love what you said to your friend. I think that's really important to share that creativity shows up in every single thing we do. It starts at the level of thought, like that, even standing in your closet and thinking, you know what? I think I'm going to put myself together like this. Wear blue today. So you create how you present yourself. Then people create businesses. People create, you talked about the tulip. Someone's created how they're going to plant those out. Or even if they took money, if they said, you come in and you pay this much to advertising, you're constantly seeing creativity in the world all the time. But somewhere along the line, it's gotten in our, especially in Western thinking, that it's
Mhm.
got to be an art form, like you're a singer or and so then that hits our, and we tend to have this ranking thing in our how we think of things, or perfectionism. So we think, well, I don't really pass the test there, so I'm just not.
Right, right.
And unfortunately, yeah, we didn't get that piece in school, that we're all creating it all the time. And so I like to tell people that with art therapy, when you break it down, the art that we're talking about is just pure expression. Like I said, that childlike life force expression. And that's the sort of creativity we're looking at. And with therapy, that word in the Latin means therapia, means to intend towards. And
Mm.
all we're intending towards is growth, like beyond the resentment or beyond the anger, or just to free ourselves so that we grow. Just like a plant that's kind of like trapped and it can't really get to the sun, will curl and bend itself and get to the light. We're doing that. We're just finding ways to lighten things up so that we can flow a bit easier through life.
One of the things I like the most about it, is that, if you're not a journaler, which I'm not, um, I used to be a journaler, high school angst, all of that, volumes and volumes.
Yes.
But I'm not a journaler. I'm not comfortable doing that anymore. I'm not sure why, but this felt like it gave me another outlet similar
Mm,
to journaling. That it didn't have to be words. It was just emotions on a piece of paper. And the other thing that you encouraged me to do too, which I'd kind of forgotten about, was all the different types of media. So I went out, I had to go out, had to buy something because I was so excited. I bought the chalks, which I had never used chalks before. And then using a combination of the chalks and the watercolors. And it was just so liberating, like you said, to kind of just play with it and not have any expectation of the outcome. Or so people, I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you aren't sure what art therapy is, it's amazing.
we
We
play this stuff
play.
out of us.
Yeah.
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 And that feels good. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about, you have some workshops. You have a workshop that's like a 4-phase workshop. So just
Mm.
to talk a little bit about that. And I want to talk about heart speak. Because
Yeah.
I've heard a lot about it, but I really have to say I'm really not very well versed in what it is. And since you are a goddess with many skills, I want to talk about all of them.
Oh, I would love to share about heart speak. Sure.
Okay, well, we are talking with Corey MacDonald today. You're listening to Three Things I've Learned, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. You are listening to Three Things I've Learned. I'm Susan Dolci, and today I am talking with Corey MacDonald, art goddess of all.
Aw, I'll take
She's
that.
art therapist, heart speaker, energy healer, and you can find her at creatinghealingwithcorey.com. And she is offering a free creating healing session to the first person who calls in today. That number is 800-930-2819. And let's talk a little bit about what your workshop, because you have, it's kind of intense. I mean, we don't want to give it away, but and I don't mean to scare people away by that, but it's 4 phases, and it's meant to transform your life.
Yeah, it's big. And it's exciting because these are the things that we we really need these in life. That when you something's coming up and you often get knocked off your balance, whether it's a relationship problem or it can be even a little thing that just keeps kind of happening that you kind of think, God, this is still bugging me after all this time. Or it can be a huge thing, like suddenly, a parent is really sick and now it's, oh, I've got to go and tend to them and put my life on hold. It doesn't matter. Whatever challenge or conundrum or hiccup you're going through, we spend 4 weeks going through, in a nutshell, what I teach in my book, Life in Full Colors. I've created this in an e-course. And beyond the e-course, which you can do in your own capacity, I then do a live Zoom call at the end of the week where we, in real time, we take, like Susan and I were talking about with when we dovetailed on the on a live stream together, whatever is occurring in life that is wanting to be looked at, that's a challenge. We just put it in the art, and the art can hold anything. And this is again not making art like a pretty pony or something to hang on the living room wall. In fact, like Susan said, this is in a sense a way of journaling without words. It's so much about flowing your energy onto a page, taking a look at it, learning how to pivot it and upcycle it. So oftentimes that art you don't want to show to someone. It's like you don't want to show your journal to everybody. So a lot of my pieces will end up in an art journal, or some of them they want to be gone. They'll get crunched up. Feels good to rip things up. If you ever have energy to burn and you're frustrated, just try ripping some paper. It feels delicious. So we're actually having a somatic experience too, because as Susan said, when she made those jagged lines, like I remember making those lines, you're moving and your breath is deepening. You're actually having a physiological and you're having a shift in your body state. So you're actually having a full embodied experience and changing the way you language. We so often we're verbal about our problems, and that just creates more because what we focus on expands. So instead of snowballing something and making it bigger, we're creating a whole new language to flow it out of us. Yeah.
And um, if you could share your definition of creative intelligence, because it's not your capacity to create art.
Mm-mm. No, I
How
mean,
would you define it?
I would define creative intelligence as innate in every human. And I would equate it to the creative intelligence, the creative life force of all. So in a way, we're a micro to the macro. I would say we have this creative intelligence life force within us. And it's like it's completely correlated to the universal life force. And in fact, all the modalities that I use are hooking up or reconnecting between those two because we can completely forget that we are that because the outer world is the movie playing out is pretty real. Like it's easy to get completely lost in details and what's going on in the outer world and forget that within us we have this whole connection. So even that modality you mentioned, heart speak, that's another way of getting out of the verbal. Because when we get in the verbal, we tend to get into that analytical beta problem solving mind, which can, like a like a I say it's like a monster spawning five more heads. It just seems to find more problems. More mine does. Like it's like, oh, there's this too. And that's helpful in that, like, we need that linear logical mind to get stuff done and to look for it's warning us like, hey, there's problems here. But when that's the only part of us that we're paying attention to, we forget that there's this creative intelligence in our soul, in our heart, in our soul, in our central beingness that is filled with solutions, that is filled
Mhm.
with infinite potentials. But we can't access that from just being stuck in the thinking mind all the time.
Yeah, so, like, when I was done with my art thing,
Yes.
my sunflower-ish thing that I created, um, because I've seen you do this when you go through the process, um, you get quiet. Like, the energy is out there on the page, and, get to that still part, and what's the message? What's the
Mm,
healing message? And, I think that's almost, I don't wanna say it's more important than actually putting the art on the paper or, flushing that out, but, I think the beautiful part about that is that it does require us to get still and get connected to our source and to
yeah.
really listen. And not so it's not like, "Okay, I coulda left that resentment on the page." I'm like, "Okay, that was great, oh, that was cathartic. I feel a lot better." Rip it up, throw it out, whatever. But unless I was listening for the lesson,
Mm,
um, self-compassion,
yeah.
uh, forgiveness, like, that's what's so her book is amazing, you guys. It's really easy to read. You feel like you're talking to your best friend on the sofa. Um, and
Oh, I'm so glad
eh,
you felt that. That was
and
my intention.
yeah, I highly recommend it, and of course, I know I hear her in my head because I know her Canadian accent, so of course, because I've watched a lot of Corey videos, um,
Oh,
but yeah, I mean, what do you have to say about that part? Because
yeah.
does that come easily to everybody?
Yeah, that comes so easily, but like you say, we need to go there inwardly. And that is my joy to kind of take that key and unlock that because it's in you, it's in me, it's in everybody. And it's like a gift because we didn't know we have this incredible intelligence that when we talked about this upcycling artist and how we upcycle these things, and I'm really glad Susan brought this up. There's a point where it's more than just dumping, getting rid of this stuff. It's asking bigger questions. If we ask higher questions, we'll get higher answers and higher
Mhm,
intelligence. So when we start to, instead of moan and groan about, oh, this thing, instead we're, okay, I've got this thing, but what if it wasn't a problem? Like,
right.
what if this was a gift? And that's a big question to ask of something that's been painful or tender. Sometimes we can't get straight to the gift, but at
Mm,
least to ask, what if this wasn't a problem? And what might I learn from this? That is a huge shift in consciousness. And if we can shift our state, I also studied with Dr. Joe Dispenza, so I always love this line. When we shift our internal state, we shift our personality, and if we can shift our personality, we can shift our personal reality. And
mm,
this is massive because then we don't just get tread like retreading the same stuff, and we can actually come to the place where that resentment that you felt in that situation, or my resentment with that situation with my mother-in-law, I could see, oh my gosh, she's opened up, she's a portal for me. I can see something that was really needing care, like tending to. So all of a sudden the love opens up. You don't
Mhm.
resent people, or you don't resent situations, or you don't. I've had that, what you share. I've had that experience of moving to a certain country, and it's like I could easily go, oh, I hated it living there, like, and write off a whole 7 years or something. And but when you work with these things, you can think, no, there was a gift there. There was a learning. I evolved, I grew. And all of a sudden it softens everything. And there's space for acceptance and love and compassion. And that's huge, because we soften our self, like our view of ourself and how we moved through moments and situations or conversations, and we become a lot more loving to ourselves. And that's ultimately the goal, because how we relate to ourselves is how we relate to everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And gratitude.
Oh,
Like that's
yes.
when I know I can be in a place of gratitude for whatever, I dare I say horrible experience, but like for whatever
Yeah.
situation was painful or, traumatic, or um, when I can look back and say, wow, I'm really
Mm,
actually grateful that I had that experience because it kind of made me who I am today.
that's
Yeah.
it. These things become, yeah, exactly. These things become our superpowers, because we seek out. I mean, how I got all these tools is because things were broken. I felt broke. I needed to find a better way. So we grow with these things. They make us resilient. They make us gritty. They bring us wisdom, so that when we turn back, we don't look back with regret. We look back and say, "Ah, I grew. I got wisdom from that."
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to take another quick break. You're listening to Three Things I've Learned. I am chatting with Corey MacDonald today, and I'm having so much fun. I hope you all are too.
Me too.
we'll, we'll be right back, everybody. Hey, we're back, and we are talking with Corey MacDonald. She is an art therapist, she's a heart speaker, she's an energy healer. She is the author of Life in Full Colors. You can get that at Amazon, I know for sure. It is
Mhm.
a super fun read, and if you are creative, if you have a stash of paints and markers or whatever you like to play with, she takes you through the process in the book, or you can go to her website at creatinghealingwithcorey.com, and she has some online courses that kind of take, like you said, take you through the same process, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been saying since we started the show, I want to talk about heart speak because like I said, I've heard the term, but I really don't know anything about it. So educate me.
Yeah. Heartspeak came into my life just recently when we were living in the Middle East. And yeah, I was intrigued like you, Susan. When I heard the word, I thought, I love that, heartspeak, because I'm all about getting, like I said, getting out of the ruminating thinking mind into the heart. And it again is another modality that is was created by Dr. Ann Jensen, who's now become not just a mentor to me, but a friend of mine. And was a former chiropractor. Interesting, all these chiropractors like Dr. Joe Dispenza, like they because they understand energy and they understand the body holds and stores heavy trapped emotions. So she was seeing that when she was working on clients, that they had stuff stuck in them. And of course you chat with your chiropractor, and she could see a correlation. So she wanted to discover a process to move this stuff out. And so that's what Heartspeak does. So again, it's like similar to art therapy or energy healing, in that it's predominantly nonverbal. And what you do is similar to art therapy. You have something that's just feeling not right, whether it's body, mind, spirits. You might have a backache, or you might have had a recurring argument with maybe your partner or a family member, or you have stress, you've lost your job. It doesn't matter. It could be any scenario, a
Mhm.
challenge. And when you heart speak it, what you do is you recognize that whatever's playing out in the now has a core component, an emotional component that can be up for healing from in our early years, usually from the womb to 7 years, right?
Mhm.
We know that
Right.
we had certain woundings that happen, and generally we don't know, and so they're subconscious, can't access them. So things play out in our life over and over and over, right? Until
Yep.
we realize, you know what, I want to heal this thing, or I want to look at this thing. So we go right to the root. So literally with heart speak, the heart speaker, whoever's taking you through, and there's heart speakers all over the world. So it's just heartspeak.org, or you can book a session with me. I'd love to take you through. I use this, by the way, as a tool when I have anything that I'm triggered or something. I'll even put it in my phone and say, I could heart speak that later. So you can
Mm.
hold these things, right, till you can get somewhere quiet.
Hmm.
And essentially, you create a safe space. So in my book, I talk about creating a safe space. You can literally create a safe space by curling. When we're in a kind of protective mode,
Hmm.
we curl in like a little shell, and we go in and we take this. We take a score, on a scale of 1 to 10. Let's say it's a neck pain. Where are we at? Okay, I'm at an 8. So then we heart speak it out. And so we kind of, with heart speak, they take the top 5 heavy trapped emotions and they put it into 5. I mean, there's a myriad of versions, but there's either fear we're working with, or there's anger, or a
Hmm.
sadness, or a shame, or a disgust. And
Hmm.
all of these things are on one end of the scale, as that I would call them a heavy.
Hmm.
But when we flip them and pivot them on the light, fear will turn to love, anger to joy, disgust will turn to allowing, and shame is I am enough. So what we're doing is we're going in, we're allowing ourselves in this safe place to feel that heavy emotion, because so often we were told as kids, oh, don't cry, stop your
Hmm.
crying. So how
Hmm.
could we feel our sadness? Or, oh, it's not nice for girls to be angry, be nice to your sister. Just be nice.
Yeah.
And these sort of things. So we didn't learn how to feel, so we literally tunnel in and we feel the snot out of our emotions. We just feel the heck out of them. We even raise them. So I remember Dr. Ann taking me through it, and I was feeling anger. I had a lot of neck pain. And so she'll speak. Is it anger? Is it disgust? Is it, and it's kind of like when you're choosing that crayon, suddenly
Mm.
your intelligence will just know it's sadness. Like, even though my mind won't know why it's sad, we don't worry about the why. We just instinctively go. So then we tunnel in, and we know that if we actually act out an emotion, our body will feel it even more. So
Mm.
you might bring on, like, if it's anger, you might crunch your face, or like a little child, we just feel it, and we tunnel in and we go through and bring up waves of it, so that it's almost like a washcloth. You're wringing this out. You're giving yourself permission to feel that emotion. And then when we suddenly, there's this point where you can't bring it up anymore. You've wrung
Mhm.
it out. So then you pivot, literally, your body, and you sit upright and you receive the opposite. So
Mhm.
sadness, it's a bit much to go to happiness from sad. So you just receive peace, waves of peace. So you're downloading a new emotion into that wrung out, those cells that are wrung out of the old trapped emotion. And then you check again. Where am I? Am I with that neck pain? Or, and then you can go through again and again. So you're basically going through and allowing yourself to feel whatever emotion was disallowed. And again, another beautiful tool and modality in order to free yourself of any sort of pain or challenge that's going on, that's been activated or triggered something in your body or your energetic body.
And what I find fascinating about that is sometimes I mean, I was kind of going through an experience like this the other day, and I just felt anxious all over. And I'm not an anxious person. I was like, where is this coming from? And and I wanted to cry, but I couldn't cry. And I was like,
Mm.
what is going on? And I kept thinking, okay, I was like going through every scenario of what triggered it and what brought it on. And and then all of a sudden I went, this is grief. This is grief. And then I could cry. because my mom passed away in November, and I think there's still that, grief comes up at like the craziest times. So
Definitely.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that sounds like it's a super, super healing modality, and so many people could get so much out of that, because you need somebody to kind of, first of all, you need to know that you're in a safe container,
Yeah.
and there's no judgment, and then just to ask the questions, because you don't know what to ask.
Yes. Yes. And what I love about it is, um, once you do it a few times with someone, all of a sudden you realize I can do this for myself. So it becomes something in your pocket, so that it sounds like you
Yeah.
just knew how to kind of do this intuitively for yourself. But sometimes we just get bowled over, like you said, and especially grief.
Yeah.
It comes like waves, and you don't even recognize that it's there, and suddenly you realize, ooh, that's sadness. So honoring you for that.
Thank you for being here with me today. I can't believe it's already the top of the hour-ish and we've got to go.
I
I could
know.
talk to you or like, okay, you got 1 minute left, Susan. Okay. So if for those of you who are interested in connecting with Corry, you can reach her at creatinghealingwithcorry.com. Her book is Life in Full Colors. You can get that at Amazon. If you're interested in learning anything more about me, I'm at susandolci.com. We all have a story to tell. You can live in the story, or you can transform the story, but it's your choice. If you change your story, you can also change our world. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to 3 Things I've Learned with Susan Dolci. Tune in every first and third Tuesday at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern on transformationtalkradio.com for more inspiring stories of radical transformations, courageous breakthroughs, and life lessons. For more information on Susan and the stories that shift our souls, visit her at susandolci.com. That's susandolci.com, DOLCI. We'll see you next time.